In July of 1859, a prospector named W.S. Bodie began working on a gold claim in the Sierra Nevadas in California. That winter, Bodie froze to death. Although in life he never achieved wealth, in death he achieved fame. And when gold and silver deposits were discovered in the area in 1860, the small mining camp that sprang up was given his name, Bodie. But the name was misspelled by a sign painter, and so Bodey became Bodie. In the 1860s, Bodie continued to be a small mining camp, with limited mining being done in the area. It wasn't until 1877 and 1878 that Bodie rapidly grew in population, with miners coming from all over to try their luck in striking it rich. Bodie's population peaked towards the end of 1879 and into 1880, being approximately 7,000 or 8,000 people. But before Bodie could become the booming mining town it was known as, the town had to survive the bitter cold and snow between late January and April of 1878. This was a very trying time for those who found themselves stuck in Bodie, but despite the desperate conditions, many still had hope that when the snow melted, there was gold out there to fill their pockets. In January 1878, Bodie began to earn its reputation as a rough and wild mining camp. On the 15th, James Blair and John Bresnan exchanged gunfire, which left Bresnan dead, and Blair shot in the arm and in the shoulder. Bresnan would die 26 days later from his wounds. Up to this point, the weather around Bodie had been favorable. A newspaper out of Carson City published, "This is so mild a winter that mountain travel, generally stopped by the elements at this season of the year, is now prosecuted uninterruptedly in all directions, and Lake Bigler and Bodie are almost as accessible now as in July." But that wouldn't last for long. A letter from Bodie, written on January 27th, described the state of the town. "I arrived in this new El Dorado about 1 week ago. I found the journey at this season of the year none of the pleasantest, the weather being cold and stormy, and everything buried in snow. I find the place, however, one of the liveliest I ever was in. Everybody is in the best of spirits, notwithstanding the uncomfortably cold and disagreeable weather." On January 30th, a description of Bodie and its population was published. "Bodie is increasing in population rapidly, there being now 34 whiskey saloons and about 2,000 people in the place. The arrivals are largely in excess of the departures, in spite of the weather, which has been very cold. By the beginning of February, conditions in Bodie were deteriorating, causing the local paper, the Bodie Standard, to publish, 'Our California and Nevada exchanges will do us a favor by cautioning such of their readers who intend coming to Bodie to defer their trip for at least 3 months. People are coming in here at the rate of 15 to 25 per day, which, with our present limited accommodations, has resulted in crowding the town to such an extent that to obtain even a place to spread one's blanket is a matter of great difficulty. Although there was a great demand for hotels to be built, much of the lumber available at Bodie was going to the construction of individual cabins. To make things worse, on February 12th, a fire destroyed a restaurant owned by Sam Chung, a Chinese immigrant known as Big Sam. Big Sam's was one of the most popular restaurants in Bodie. High winds helped feed the flames, but thankfully it was blowing in a direction away from another nearby business, Gilson and Barber's store. The people in Bodie also tore down another nearby building so that the fire wouldn't spread and destroy the entire town. Snowstorms and gusts of wind continued to hit Bodie, now with even less buildings to support the population. By mid-February, traveling to Bodie became quite difficult. Mr. Crawford says that there are many teams on the road in all sorts of degrees of distress. Those coming this way, as well as those going to Bodie, are, many of them, mired or stalled, as the teamsters say. And in truth, the road is very miry, very muddy, and very difficult of passage. Newspapers warned their readers to suspend any plans of traveling to Bodie. The Daily Appeal, out of Carson City, published, distress in Bodie. Mr. Adams says that in view of the distressful times at Bodie, caused by the inconsiderate flocking thither of many people in shortened circumstances, the more substantial citizens there have started the notion of a public soup house. Indeed, the roughs and tramps are too hungry to be trifled with. The fact is that Bodie is overcrowded, not only with working people, but with all the idlers and fortune hunters in the country. And of course, the times are hard. So, let us say to our readers, advise your acquaintances to keep away from Bodie until the late spring or early summer. Even with warnings and poor road conditions, people still managed to find their way to Bodie, motivated by promises of wealth. On February 20th, the Bodie paper published, Red Frank Wheeler and Lou P. Wardell arrived on last Saturday's stage from Virginia City. Red Frank is going to start out today for the first time on snowshoes to take a look at his new mining investment south of Queen Bee Hill, purchased 2 weeks ago and called the Riker Mine. This mine is very highly spoken of by those who have seen the property. The weather on February 26 was particularly bad. The Bodie paper wrote about it the next day. Yesterday was the roughest day yet experienced this winter in Bodie. The wind blew a perfect hurricane and whirled the dry snow and great clouds from the surrounding hills. One of the people who made it to Bodie was a correspondent to the San Francisco Chronicle, a newspaper quite familiar to the town. On March 1st, the correspondent wrote the state of affairs of Bodie in detail and was published in San Francisco on the 9th.
From the San Francisco Chronicle, March 9, 1878. A lively mining town, one of the gems that adorn the bosom of the Sierra Nevada. Correspondence of the Chronicle, Bodie, Mono County, California, March 1. Situated in a narrow canyon of the Sierra Nevada mountains, nearly 9,000 feet above the sea level, nestles the little town of Bodie, with a population of about 1,000 people, embracing every nationality and color, and a lively little town it is too. The principal pursuits of the inhabitants are whiskey drinking, fighting, gambling, and speculating in mining and town property. The chief end of it all, however, seems to be the getting of wealth in any manner it may be had. In a word, Bodie is a delicious specimen of the mushroom mining towns of early days. Sleeping accommodations are held at a premium, and the happy possessor of a lodging house in these diggings needs no more productive or remunerative bonanza. There is much suffering and privation experienced by the poorer classes of adventurers who have been snowed in here for the winter. Lumber cannot be had for building purposes, owing to the impassability of the roads. There are 3 well-stocked country stores here, however, and there is no fear of starvation. There are also 2 clothing stores, a bakery, a blacksmith shop, shoemaker shops, laundries, a brewery, and 20 rum mills, all well supplied, and if Providence will but stay the chilly blasts of winter in order that the stocks of these latter institutions may not freeze, there is yet hope for the inhabitants of Bodie. There is no dearth of amusements. Faro, Keno, Monte, and other enticing games are dealt with impunity and profit. Communication by stage has been kept open with Aurora, Nevada, but at heavy expense. The Chronicle, about the only newspaper that reaches this place, comes to hand regularly, and is eagerly sought after. We have a local weekly paper, The Standard, a very bright and enterprising little sheet. Prospectors travel about on snowshoes and stake out their claims on the white surface of the snow, which is from 3 to 20 feet deep. The first thaw will doubtless confuse the titles to many claims, but the ground will be softer then, and grave digging will be much easier than now. As yet, the ore-producing mines are few in number, the Standard mine being at present the most productive of bullion, and milling facilities are extremely limited, though it is confidently expected that at least half a dozen mills will be built and running by next winter. At present, there are 2 in operation and 1 more in course of construction. Mono County is rich in minerals. Undeveloped ledges of free milling and base ores containing both gold and silver are to be found in abundance anywhere within a radius of 20 miles of this place. Those who intend to pitch their tents and invest their capital in this vicinity had better defer their trip till June.
Even with deep snow, if the wind and snowstorm stopped, the people of Bodie would venture out. According to a letter published on March 5th, Bodie is alive with mining excitement. The snow is 4 feet deep, but as the weather is pleasant, prospectors are out in every direction, and mines are being located even 10 miles from this camp. Travel to Bodie was still dangerous in early March. 2 teams with wagons and back actions, loaded with merchandise for Gilson and Barber, left for Bodie yesterday. The boys show great courage in tackling the bad roads, but the freight must go through. Trekking through the snow could be risky, as one Bodie resident discovered on March 8th. F.B. Hessel met with a very severe accident last Friday while coming down Silver Hill on snowshoes. In crossing the road, he slipped and fell, striking on the back of his head, knocking him senseless. He remained in that condition about 12 hours. He is now able to be around, attending to his business. Hessel was lucky he didn't wind up like W.S. Bodie. Within Bodie, conditions continued to be dismal. An old, seasoned miner wrote this letter on March 23rd. Tell all gentlemen of limited means to stay away from Bodie. Men can get nothing on shape or muscle in this camp. There are good mines here, but they are kept back by impassable roads and snow. Men on the side in this county sleep on the floor of saloons and are swept out in the morning by the swampers. Millionaires by the hundreds are walking the streets hungry, cold, dry, and not enough wardrobe to wad Spider's shotgun with. The snow is 2.5 feet deep. Tell gamblers particularly to stay away from here. This is no camp for bloods. Even into April, it was a terrible time to be in Bodie. Charles Courtois has just returned from Bodie and gives us a very doleful account of that camp. He tells us that the place is fearfully overdone. There are about 200 men in employment there, and between 700 and 800 out of work, with no present prospect of getting any. In fact, it is not likely the camp will support its present population for a long time to come, to say nothing of the crowds daily rushing in. The road is populous with men with their blankets on their backs, making their way back as best they can. The streets of the town are full of penniless, hungry men who are anxiously waiting for any kind of work to get them grub. Prices are high, $1 a night for a bed, but many think barroom floors good enough to spread their blankets on. Board, $2.50 per day, and everything else in proportion. Courtois says he has been in several new mining camps, but Bodie is the roughest one he ever saw, fighting, shooting, and cutting being an important industry. The middle of June will be early enough for people to go there. April was no better. Snow continued to be a problem, and spirits were low. The large number of people in Bodie without work were stuck between a rock and a hard place. On the one hand, by being in Bodie, they had an advantage. As soon as the weather improved, they would be the first to find and work a claim. However, in the meantime, they had to survive the rough conditions, sleeping wherever they could, eating and drinking what they could afford, all the while the money that they brought with them was diminishing. On April 9th, a correspondent going by the name of Ketchum wrote a letter that was published. Bodie is a new camp with 2,000 inhabitants, nearly all coming here within the last 6 months. There are 200 buildings in the town of Bodie, in 3 daily stages running, 2 of which go to Carson City, Nevada, and the other to Belleville, Nevada. The stages are loaded both ways. There are 2 quartz mills running steadily on rich ore, and also another mill building, and an addition of 20 stamps building to the standard mill, which will make it a 40-stamp mill. There is about 100 quartz locations, and the prospectors all seem to think that they are going to strike an eternal fortune. There is no doubt but that there are good-paying mines here, as those in operation go to prove it. Millionaires go dry and hungry on the streets of Bodie, and a great many men are out of employment, as it has been a backward spring. The hills are covered with snow, which is considerable of an injury to the camp at present. Lumber is worth $100 per thousand, and not much to be had at any price until the snow melts off. Every second door is a saloon, and 2 barrels of whiskey drank daily. A large number of roughs in town, the worst I ever saw, nearly every night a shooting scrape. I was walking over the hill the other day when I overtook a man on snowshoes packing a 50-pound sack of flour with a strap strung from his forehead and fastened to the sack, just for all the world like the way the squaws pack their papooses in Indian Valley. I asked him what his occupation was in the mountains. He said he was superintending a mine. "Why don't you have one of your men pack the flour for you?" I asked. "Because there's only 2 of us, and my partner is in the shaft at work," was the reply. This is a desolate-looking place. The hills bare, no timber whatever within 8 miles of town, and what is to be had is nut pine and sagebrush. Persons coming here will not find much pleasure in traveling, as it is a long, weary, and rough road. Catch 'em. Bad times at Bodie continued until May, when the townspeople finally had something to celebrate, the coming of a telegraph line. Bodie, May 11th. Our enterprising burg at last has telegraphic communications with the outside world. The occasion has been duly celebrated by the Bodie artillery. The members turned out to a man, and with plenty of powder and a couple of anvils, they made the mountain ring. Bonfires blazed, and champagne freely flowed. There has not been a man killed here for upwards of a month. On the 6th instant, John Copley, Irish, and James Pollard, Scotch, both slightly exhilarated with overdoses of Mountain Dew, came to blows. Pollard was cut in several places, one wound nearly severing his jugular vein. His chances of recovery are poor. Copley was discharged by a justice of the peace. The prospect is that there will be dull times in the mines hereabouts for 6 months to come. There is plenty of gold to be found, but it takes capital to get it out. Many claims are owned by San Franciscans, who manifest very little enterprise in developing their properties. Some live capitalists might do a good work for this region and make fortunes by interesting themselves personally in these matters. There are plenty of rumors afloat of better places to go to, and many of the miners think of digging out. With the snow melting, the weather improving, and the roads passable, the town of Bodie began to come out of hibernation. The best times in Bodie had yet to come. Gold would be discovered, money would be spent, and blood would be shed, creating the reputation Bodie is known for. On June 13th, 1878, the president of the Miners' Union at Bodie, Alex Nixon, would be shot and killed by Thomas MacDonald. Nixon was 31 years old and a native of Ireland. Although everyone came to Bodie looking for wealth, many returned home having only found heartbreak, and some, like Alex Nixon, would never leave.